All right, good morning, everyone. We're going to get started with an invocation from Pastor Matt Wheeler of Oak Hills Church, and that will be followed by the Pledge of Allegiance, led by Griffin Cannon, representing Girl Scouts Troop 7309. Please stand.
Let's pray. Father, we thank you. We thank you for your power, your love, your mercy, and your grace. We thank you for what we got to celebrate just 2 days ago, the resurrection of your Son, Jesus Christ. Father, I pray that you be with this council today. I pray that you give them wisdom and discernment. I pray that you give them just the burden to care for those that are the least of these. May we seek justice and mercy and love and peace. God, I pray that you be with all of us here in attendance, not just in this meeting, but individually in our own private lives. May you just showcase yourself as true and as caring deeply for us. Father, I pray you be with our city today. I pray that you be with those protecting us and guarding us, be with our first responders and those that are working hard in the streets. I pray that you just keep us safe today. May everything that we do in this place bring you honor and glory. In the name of Jesus we pray. Amen.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Great job, Griffin, and thank you, Pastor Wheeler. All right, I call this meeting of the City Council to order, and we have a robust presentation schedule, as might be evidenced by the size of the crowd here today. So I'm going to make my way to the front, and why don't we start with our friends from, we'll do United Way. How about that? I think that's a lot of the room. And by that I meant everybody come up, or at least somebody from United Way. Now, as you entered the building today, you might have seen the tanker truck, Love's tanker truck, with United Way icons on it this morning, which was pretty cool. We're still checking to see if there was a permit for all of that hullabaloo down there. But this is a very special, not just day, but year for United Way. And we've got Shane here from Love's, who's in a leadership role with the organization this year as a volunteer to help us. But actually, it may be best, everybody's here who is here with United Way today would please stand. Yeah, thank you. All right, so to learn a little bit more about what I'm talking about, I would ask the clerk to read this proclamation.
Whereas the United Way of Central Oklahoma was originally established on July 5th, 1923, and whereas the United Way of Central Oklahoma's 5 founding agencies were the Boy Scouts of America, Last Frontier Council, the Salvation Army, Central Oklahoma Area Command, Sunbeam Family Services, YMCA of Greater Oklahoma City, and YWCA Oklahoma City. And whereas, though many things about United Way have evolved over the last century, its determination to create a stronger, healthier, and more compassionate Oklahoma City has only strengthened. And whereas, for the past 100 years, United Way of Central Oklahoma has been a foundation of resources raising more than $700 million for local nonprofit agencies that provide vital health and human services to our greater Oklahoma City community. And whereas, growing from its original 5, United Way of Central Oklahoma currently serves 54 partner agencies. And whereas it is United Way of Central Oklahoma's mission to connect people and resources to improve the well-being of those in our community. Now therefore, I, David Holt, Mayor of the City of Oklahoma City, do hereby proclaim 2023 as the year of United Way in Oklahoma City and congratulate the agency on a century of compassion.
So when Debbie Hampton, where's Debbie? Yeah, great. The unsinkable Debbie Hampton. I had to think of the right word. Approached me, she said, would you declare a year? I know you do, like months and days and weeks. And I was like, obviously for Debbie, anything, but truly for United Way, anything. I mean, we as a city government obviously can't meet all the needs of the community. We rely so tremendously on the nonprofit sector, and the United Way is really the face of so much of that effort here in Oklahoma City. And so we'll give you a year. I mean, you probably could ask for a century, and I would have given it to you. So this entire year is the year of United Way. And here to say a few words on behalf of the organization is the current board chair, also with Loves, Shane Wharton.
Well, thank you, Mayor Holt. This is a big day for us. We're honored that you would recognize us in this way, and thank you to all of the city council members as well. And yes, I understand Debbie's how she can be convincing as well, because that's how we ended up with United Way's logo on our Loves truck. I made a mention about we thought of that as a rolling billboard, and she immediately thought, oh, that means we could put United Way on it. So anyway, so that's how that happened. We're proud of the 100 years. Doesn't go quite back to statehood, but still 100 years is a long time. We're calling it a century of compassion, and there's a couple agencies in here. Homeless Alliance, I heard Girl Scouts come up. There's 54 agencies supported by United Way, and I know we have all the United Way staff that are proud today, the agencies that are represented, and our board members are here as well. So thank you, and I also want to say thank you to the council members here. I know that all of you personally are leaders in the community, and you do a lot of work to support the needs of this community, and you're great partners with United Way. We appreciate that. Thank you. And I think you should have in front of you one of our 100-year commemorative books as a thank you for honoring us today. That's all I have. And we're looking forward to the next 100 years. And I almost forgot, for Mayor Holt, we have a United Way flag. Yes. You can proudly put that up in front of your house, or here would be fine too.
Awesome. Let's hear it for the United Way. Thank you. All right, why don't we have our friends who are here to talk about Child Abuse Prevention Month come forward. And everybody can come up. All right. Well, to learn a little bit more about Child Abuse Prevention Month, I would ask the clerk to read this proclamation.
Whereas Oklahoma City's future prosperity depends on nurturing the healthy development of more than the 175,000 children currently living, growing, and learning within our community. And whereas research shows that safe, nurturing relationships and stimulating, stable environments improve brain development and child well-being, while neglectful or abusive experiences and unstable or stressful environments increase the odds of poor childhood outcomes. And whereas the abuse and neglect of children can cause severe, costly, and lifelong struggles that affect all of society, including physical and mental health problems, school failure, and criminal behavior. And whereas studies show that parents and caregivers with positive social support networks are more resilient and better equipped to provide safe environments and nurturing experiences for their children. And whereas individuals, businesses, schools, and faith-based and community organizations must make child well-being a top priority and take action to support the physical, social, emotional, and educational development and competency of all children. And whereas during the month of April, the City of Oklahoma City, Parent Promise Prevent Child Abuse Oklahoma, the Exchange Club of Oklahoma City, the Exchange Club of Edmond, the Exchange Club of Downtown Oklahoma City, and the Oklahoma State Department of Health, in collaboration with their citywide partners, will be engaging individuals and communities throughout the city in a coordinated effort to prevent child abuse and neglect by promoting awareness of healthy child development, positive parenting practices, and support resources available for families within our communities. And whereas we encourage all citizens of Oklahoma City to recognize that prevention starts with each of us. Now therefore, I, David Holt, Mayor of the City of Oklahoma City, do hereby proclaim April 2023 as Child Abuse Prevention Month in Oklahoma City.
Well, thank you. There's really hardly any more important issue, and we appreciate the efforts that everybody up here makes. We have been joined in past years by Sherry Fair with Parent Promise, who has moved on. We certainly want to express a word of gratitude to her years of service, and Jody Lewis, who we know from any number of things, including recently the Oklahoma Municipal League, has stepped into that role, and we would love to hear a few words from you, Jody.
Thank you, Mayor and Council, for having us today. As Mayor said, my name is Jody Lewis. I'm serving as Interim Executive Director of Parent Promise, and we're so grateful that the city would recognize this as Child Abuse Prevention Month. And really the work that Parent Promise does is a robust team. And we'll start off by acknowledging our Board of Directors and our Board President, Melanie Brigani. And also, we were founded in 1988 out of the Oklahoma City Exchange Club. And so the president of the Oklahoma City Exchange Club, Andrea Wallace, is here with us today, as well as our founder and board emeritus, Charlie Swinton. And so we're thankful for them to being here today and all the work that they do. We do have, since 1988, we've served over 7,500 children and families, making sure that they have healthy, safe, happy childhoods through our home-based parent education programs. And we have an amazing staff that makes that happen. With us today, we also have staff members, Reagan Mock, who's our Community Relations Director, and Shauna Norman, who's our Programs Manager. A lot of the work that we do also is with our partnerships with the state of Oklahoma, with the State Department of Health and the Department of Human Services. And with us today from the State Department of Health, we have Susie Gibson and Alyssa Bayer. And so we also have countless private sector partners through foundations and corporations, individuals and volunteers that make this all possible. So thank you again, Mayor and Council, for your support of this being Child Abuse Prevention Month, not only this month, but really every month. Thank you.
Absolutely. Let's hear it for everybody up here. Thank you. All right, Rick, you want to hop up here? Council members Carter and Stonecipher came to me last week and had been visiting with you about the importance of work zone safety. Obviously, we're blessed to be doing a lot of work. I've passed through a couple work zones on the way here today, and that's vital for the progress of our city. But it's also, you know, not many of us would want to literally stand in traffic, you know, so it's something that we need to be conscious of. It can be dangerous work. And so I would ask the clerk to read this Work Zone Awareness Week proclamation.
Whereas construction work and repairs to our roadways must be done while traffic is still active, putting both motorists and workers at risk every day. And whereas workers diligently continue to improve, rebuild, and maintain roadways so motorists can safely and efficiently travel across Oklahoma City and the state of Oklahoma. And whereas since the citizens of Oklahoma City approved the 2017 General Obligation Bond Package and the Better Street Safer City temporary sales tax extension, many street construction and resurfacing projects, as well as other infrastructure, have been underway, which means many more work zones are appearing on Oklahoma City streets. And whereas there is also an increasing number of work zones statewide, including work zones that are the largest and most complex highway construction projects in state history. And whereas in Oklahoma work zones over the past 5 years, 91 people were killed, nearly 1,300 people were injured, and there were more than 7,000 collisions, the majority of which resulted from inattentive driving, following too closely, and traveling at unsafe speeds. And whereas the City of Oklahoma City is dedicated to improving work zone safety for both workers and the traveling public. And whereas safety on the roads is a shared responsibility, and we must all do our part to keep our roadways safe. And whereas to reduce fatalities and injuries, motorists must remember that work zones need your undivided attention, so put aside distractions, be alert, and stay informed when driving through work zones. Now therefore, I, David Holt, Mayor of the City of Oklahoma City, do hereby proclaim April 17th through 21st, 2023 to be Work Zone Awareness Week in Oklahoma City, and encourage all citizens to exercise care, caution, and patience on the roadways during the designated week and at all times when traveling on our roadways.
Well, thank you, and thank you to Council Members Carter and Stonecipher for bringing this forward. And we are joined today by Rick Moore, for one-time city employee who now, for some number of years, has been with the Oklahoma Municipal Contractors Association, and we'd love to hear a few words from you, Rick. Welcome back to City Hall.
Thank you, Mayor. And first of all, let me say good morning to you, to council members, to city manager, and to city staff. I want to thank you for this because, you know, this is so important for many reasons, but the two I wanted to bring up, number one is Executive Director of the Oklahoma Municipal Contractors Association. Hundreds of the employees of my members are out in the streets and on the shoulders and in the trenches working on utilities or paving of the streets every day. And many of them on their hands and knees, and traffic is just feet away, zooming by them. And so certainly this is something that's very important to them. But it's also very important to the employees of the city of Oklahoma City as well. They're out there on those same streets, on those same shoulders, on those same trenches, working right alongside. We're proud to partner with the city of Oklahoma City to both work, maintain, and build the infrastructure of this great city. So I think it's a wonderful thing that you guys recognize the importance of what's the most important asset of both my members and of the city of Oklahoma City, and that's all of our employees. So on their behalf, I want to thank you for this, and we appreciate very much the thought of being aware in a safety work zone.
Yeah, let's hear it for everybody who works on our infrastructure. Thank you. All right, Kim King, come forward. We are now at the resolutions. Kim, you are our Teacher of the Month, and we'd like to learn a little bit more about you. So I would ask the clerk to read this resolution.
Whereas Kim King has been named Teacher of the Month for April 2023 by the Oklahoma City Public Schools Foundation and Rotary Club of Oklahoma City. And whereas Kim has been a special education teacher since 1997, serving pre-K through 5th grade students with special needs at the same elementary school, formerly Western Village and currently Stanley Hupfield Academy, for the past 26 years. And whereas Kim is to be recognized for her teaching skills working with some of Oklahoma City's most challenged students, she has served as a resource and advocate for students throughout the years. Kim has served as the Oklahoma A+ Fellow with the Oklahoma A+ Arts Network, sharing her expertise in differentiated instruction and integration of the curriculum for pre-K through 5th grade students. She has continued to seek specialized training and certifications to assist her with meeting the needs of her students. Kim was also nominated for Teacher of the Year at Oklahoma City Public Schools Western Village in 1999. And whereas Kim's teaching style is based on integration of the arts where students engage in the learning process through the use of movement, art, poetry, and expression in a non-traditional learning environment to help them retain and recall information. This teaching style has allowed her students to consistently meet the goals of their individualized education plans. And whereas Kim is active in her community and her church, she is a longtime member of Prospect Baptist Church, where she has lent her teaching skills to both Sunday school and Vacation Bible School, and her personal pride is being a grandmother to 3 beautiful grandchildren. And whereas Kim has remained in the classroom impacting the community of Western Village, as she has been a parent, PTA member, teacher, and a founding contributor to the first elementary charter school in Oklahoma City when Western Village Elementary converted to a public charter school. Kim's impact in the community is long-lasting as she built relationships and laid foundations for many students to become productive contributors to society. Kim's passion is to see the academic and social growth of her students. This is the best reward or gift a person can receive. Now therefore be it resolved by the mayor and council of the city of Oklahoma City that they do hereby recognize and commend Kim King on her selection as April 2023 Teacher of the Month by the Oklahoma City Public Schools Foundation and Rotary Club of Oklahoma City.
All right. Well, thank you so much for all that you do for our kids, Kim. What a great story. This is a resolution, so we want to pass this, and so I would ask if the council would consider making a motion. Got a motion and a second. Cast your votes. I wish to vote aye. Passes unanimously. Yes. Well, Kim, we'd love to hear a few words from you. If you might, I gave you fair warning. I gave you some homework, so we'd love to hear a few thoughts.
Well, here's my lesson plan. I just want to thank my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ for giving me this gift of teaching. I also want to thank my family that came to support me, my director and principal, and I just want to thank the council for helping me and voting yes. I know that there are so many dedicated and wonderful teachers throughout the state of Oklahoma who could be experiencing this joy right now, and I'm deeply honored and humbled to be able to receive this from you all. Also, I just want you to know that I try to work with integrity and give my students everything they'll need for foundational skills to be able to be successful, lifelong learners. And again, just thank you for everything.
Absolutely. Let's hear it from Mrs. King. And last but not least, Stephen Fuller. Where'd Stephen go? Over here. All right. Stephen, the crowd favorite. That's all right. You are our employee of the month. I mean, pending passage of this resolution. We'll see how that goes. But we'd love to learn a little bit more about you, and so I would ask the clerk to read this resolution.
Whereas Stephen Fuller has been a city employee for 9 years and is the Enterprise Program Manager and Systems Analyst for the IT Department. And whereas Stephen Fuller manages professional and technical staff in the development of systems and applications. And whereas Stephen Fuller plans and develops new systems or enhancements to current systems while ensuring standards and controls are maintained. And whereas Stephen Fuller has managed major projects, including making sure police were paid during a ransomware attack, implementation of the city's new learning management system, developing a request for proposal for COBRA administration services, and was the HCM and ERP IT project manager for the Oracle Cloud upgrade. And whereas Stephen Fuller's expertise in various fields allows teams to resolve challenging tasks with current technology solutions. And whereas Stephen Fuller treats everyone with respect, is approachable, and is never too busy to help others with projects. And whereas Stephen Fuller is an expert communicator and valuable resource to the city, he is also quick to recognize his team, and his leadership skills make him a role model for all employees. And whereas this council desires to recognize Stephen Fuller for his dedication, professionalism, and commitment to the residents of the city of Oklahoma City. Now therefore be it resolved by the mayor and council of the city of Oklahoma City that they do hereby thank and commend Stephen Fuller, April 2023, South Oklahoma City Kiwanis Club Employee of the Month.
All right, well, thank you. Well, this sounds approval worthy. That was pretty impressive. Let's see what the council thinks. Let's see if we can get a motion in a second. Do we have to do the verbal seconds again this week? No. There we go. We'll have Stephen look at this later, see what was slow in her. All right, cast your votes. I wish to vote aye. Passes unanimously. So sometimes I think about the fact that people used to work, these buildings were filled with people who worked without computers, you know. But today, you and your team in IT, I mean, if if the computers don't work, we literally just go home. There's really nothing for us to do. So I think we all understand the importance of what you do, even if it seems like it's behind the scenes. You're working every day to make sure that this city can provide the services to its residents that they expect, and all of that depends on our IT. So thank you for that. Congratulations on being recognized today, and we'd love to hear a few words from you, Stephen.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Council, and thank you for passing that. I just want to recognize the IT department that are here supporting me and my family. It's a really great group to work with, as well as my team that's back there. I couldn't have done this alone. So the city is a wonderful place to work for. I work with some of the most talented professional people, and we are hiring. So okc.gov/careers. All right, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Let's hear it for Stephen. Congratulations. Thank you. All right. Thank you all for getting through all of that. We're not quite done with the Office of the Mayor. First, we have a notification. This is item 3C. This notifies that Todd Stone will serve as Vice Mayor for the 6-month period beginning April 13th, this coming Thursday. Why don't we go ahead and approve that? I guess we'll just be kind of recognizing that we have received such notification. We've got we have a second and not a motion. That's a first. Oh, up there? Okay. All right, there we go. Motion and a second. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. And finally, 3D, a resolution approving travel expenses for me to attend the U.S. Conference of Mayors annual meeting in June in Columbus. We have a motion and a second. Cast your votes. Mark. Passes unanimously and with the required 6 affirmative votes. Thank you very much. Moving on now to item 4, items from council. We have item A. This was deferred from previous meeting. Item 2 is the resolution. Item 1 is an amendment revising the proposed resolution. And I guess I'll turn it over to Councilwoman Nice to present this resolution and its amendment.
First, I want to say thank you to the council members for your patience, and I know there were some things we talked through a couple weeks ago to work out and make sure we amended, added, or whatever we needed for this to be reconsidered. So I'm going to ask that our Assistant City Manager, Aubrey McDermott, present on all of the things that were discussed and or asked about a couple weeks ago. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Good morning, Mayor and Council. Aubrey McDermott, City Manager's Office. We met with council members following the last meeting, took notes of the discussion in the last meeting. So I wanted to walk you through some of the changes that we're bringing back to you in this amendment today. One of the things that was asked is that this resolution capture and further define the process for entering into an RFP process and the administration of that. And so our program description was modified to talk about the selection committee, the members of the committee, and the fact that the planning department will serve as the program administrator for this program. We also heard from council the concern about using these funds to benefit a property owner to purchase property and then do nothing more with that. There was a provision listed in the ARPA requirements that allowed that activity. We have proposed to just strike that item and delete it. So the eligible activities would not include acquiring and securing legal title of vacant property. Then we also discussed a concern about people using these funds to, in essence, flip a property, and that we would like to mirror some of the same types of clawback elements that are used in housing programs, so that if someone receives funding for this, that they are committed to holding that property for a period of time. So under the requirements, we've added that projects are subject to those contractual clawback provisions to discourage that near-term property transfer. And then we've set some thresholds for the term. So if it was a $50,000 grant, then it would be subject to a 5-year transfer restriction. If it's over $50,000, then it would be subject to a 10-year transfer restriction. And then we also wanted to make sure that under priorities, that we added a couple of priorities for the selection process, so that proposals that demonstrate a public benefit are given greater consideration. And we also want to try to distribute projects across the city that can receive funding. So to the extent possible, that program funding would be equitably distributed among wards. This is subject to the applications, of course, that are received. If we don't receive applications for consideration and they don't score well, then obviously, we would be limited by that. So those are the changes we've brought forward. If you have any questions, our team is here to answer those questions.
I've got some questions. So the first one, do we still have the item to where one person could receive up to $500,000?
Yes, the threshold for any single project would be $500,000.
Now, that person who's going to receive the money, there's no limitations in terms of their current income levels, is there?
No, it's based on the qualifications of the project, meeting the criteria to serve low-income families and communities, or that the project is located within a qualified census tract.
Yeah. Well, personally, I think granting without having a better understanding of who might potentially be involved with this, that amount of money concerns me. I would put the cap at somewhere around, well, let me back up. The other item that I'm concerned with is the fact that the recipient has no requirement to invest any of their own money into the project. Any of our economic development activities we put in, Todd, maybe you can help me in terms of what the Economic Development Trust does, but it's probably around 15%. It's not 100% city funds, is it?
Right. We look at, and I would say oftentimes you see kind of 8% of what we think that actual impact would be.
Yeah. Yeah, so 100% to me is way out of line. I would say let's look at the Community Action Agency of Oklahoma and Canadian County as an example. That organization has been in existence for an extremely long time and has been providing funds for improvements related to houses, but they're only going to provide funds to the resident of that house, the owner of that house. They have a long track record. I've heard a lot of very good responses from their programs, and I think that's an example we should look at. And in fact, here's my other concern. You say that the Public Works Department will administer this. We're going to be looking at a couple of projects down in Ward 5 that are extremely late in completion. I don't think we've got the personnel to manage this kind of program. The Community Action Agency is in place. I mean, that's what they do. I'd say if we're going to proceed with this kind of a project, turn the funds over to that organization, let them be responsible for the management of the program.
This would be the Planning Department, not Public Works Department.
Okay.
That would administer the program in the Housing and Community Development Division.
Okay. So are you up to date on all the projects?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I still think the Community Action Agency is already in place to provide this kind of assistance.
And I also just want to add that although housing would be an eligible type of use for this program. It's not limited to housing. It's really, the purpose is to reduce blight in the community by furthering a vacant and abandoned property so it can be put back into use as a warehouse or a commercial building or any other type of use.
Yeah, but still, there's no requirement for the investor, let's call that person, to have any of their own funds invested.
Correct. It would just be a grant to further those actions that are listed as eligible activities.
Any other comments or questions?
Two things from what I just heard. One, the reason I asked for this to be in-house instead of us contracting this out is so we would not have to pay a management fee in order for all of those funds to be able to go towards the program itself. If we send this out for someone to manage, we're going to lose money as far as this program is concerned. So it was important when I asked about this that it stayed in-house for our city to be able to look at, distinguish, and understand what our priorities and needs are pertaining to certain blighted areas of our community, pertaining to our qualified census tracts. And looking at that map that was sent last week, I must say I was quite surprised at how many qualified census tracts are all across our city, and they're not just in one sole ward or one certain community or one certain area of our city. So there is a way for this to serve equitably all of our city. The other is I do not have a problem with us adjusting the funds as far as the limit, the expectation of that. My concern is having some of those who may or may not already be at a min pertaining to their capacity as far as their own capital, depending on what type of property that it is. It could be just a couple things that are keeping them from being able to be able to revitalize that abandoned property. And I've talked to many owners of properties around our city that are larger that unfortunately, because depending on what may have happened, maybe it had been vandalism, maybe it had been just because it's an older site, that they are unable to do all of the upkeep because of their funds. And quite frankly, because of where we are with COVID and what we've experienced, we all realize and understand and have heard what it takes and the amounts that have been exorbitant as far as being able to buy supplies and materials in order for that to take place. My concern also is when we look at certain communities, and even I'll use it as an example, our TIF districts, and one in particular, you have to put the money in up front, and that disqualifies so many people from being able to get that benefit of having to revitalize a certain part of our community because they can't get the capital. And if you don't have the comps in your community, you can't get the capital. Those are the things that we know for sure. So this is not to say it's the answer. This is for us to look at, and I know and have faith in our planning department that they can be a great selection committee of understanding what our needs are for our city. And if there are some other priorities that need to be added, I would hope that we could do that during that RFP process for folks to really understand why this, if you are going to be granted these funds, you must produce what we're asking you to do because this is of the benefit for our city and for our residents within that same neighborhood that we're going to be working with.
Lenders will look at any proposed grant by the city and take that into consideration in terms of capital available, so that's not going to be a problem. I still believe we need to have a requirement for the owner to have some personal investment in this project, whether it's the current resident making repairs to improve the condition of the home, or a potential buyer of property they need to come in and have an investment in the project.
Well, if council would like us to include that in the RFP as one of the requirements for consideration or a priority for consideration, that could be something the selection committee evaluates, is how much the total project proposal would be and where different sources of funding would come from. Because a lot of our housing projects, for example, would pair other grants with the city grants or with the ARPA funds. So as long as we can use that as a tool for evaluating the strength of the proposal, we would be willing, if Councilwoman Nice is okay with that, including it in the RFP criteria.
Well, I think we need to specify right now what percentage of our investment as it relates to these funds will be to the total project. And as Councilman Stone said, from an economic development perspective, we're looking normally at about an 8% participation by the city. I would say we could go up to like 20% for this type of activity, but the investor still has to put in the lion's share of investments, whether it comes from other grant funds or whatever means they have. I think that's a requirement.
I am not aware of us including percentages in other programs. This would be a first if we did something like that as part of a selection process. So I think that's up for council's consideration of how you'd want to handle that.
Yes.
So real quickly, I would just like to say thanks for answering a lot of the questions that we had. And I know y'all did a lot of work on this. And Councilwoman Nice, I think it's a great project. I think it's a great idea. But one thing that came up for me when we had our session talking about some of these questions is that the funding source, in my opinion, isn't a good funding source, solely for the fact that there's already projects that are tied to that funding source, and there are projects in there that, because of the rampant inflation we're facing, we know there's going to be some cost overruns that are going to eat into some of that. So my thought on it was, I would love to see Economic Development Trust figure out how to set aside through some gold funds to try and carry forward with a project like this, serving the communities that are outlined in this resolution. So I won't be able to support this resolution. I love the resolution. I just think the funding source and mechanism we're going at it with could be improved.
I just want to be very clear. I've been asking for us to do this with gold funds for quite some time, and that's the unfortunate part, that now we're here and we've been able to find a creative way to figure it out. And now we have to say, oh, well, let's do it with gold funds. I've been asking for that for quite some time, and while I respectfully disagree that this in particular, while it is not the fix, this is a beginning of a way for us to look at in the future how we can work these types of sites for our city and for our community, because I don't know about you, I'm sure you pass them all the time, especially if you're coming into the city from wherever you may live or even around you. There are plenty of places that are boarded up, abandoned, and we have plenty on our abandoned list every other week when we go to council that people could use and be able to revitalize their properties. And that's the unfortunate part, where I get a little just, I'd say frustrated, because there are ways for this to work. And unfortunately, because we don't want to support the creative ways of making this work, and for this to be in our own city purview of submitting and being able to look at and consider properties, that's the unfortunate place of where this is. And again, I want to reiterate the fact of what I said earlier. Comps in communities and neighborhoods make a difference depending on what you are doing. And prime examples continue to exist within certain parts of our Black and brown communities and our underserved communities where redlining still exists. So therefore, it's going to be quite difficult for a lot of those folks to be able to look at how they can revitalize or be able to bring that site into the purview of what can be considered as a reusable place. So those are the things that I wanted to look at as far as this is concerned. You know, take it as you will. That's the unfortunate part. Again, this wasn't something that I just said, oh, this is just for Ward 7. Clearly, this is not just for Ward 7. This is impacting our entire city.
City Manager, to Councilman Stone's inquiry, would you address that, please? About the...
In terms of being able to do it with GALT funds?
No. Oh, don't worry. I have a follow-up about that.
Okay.
I'm talking about the, would you... Your concern...
Oh, on the projects?
Yes, would you restate that? And then I'd like to hear from the city manager a little bit about that.
Oh, you want me to restate it?
Yeah, because he might have missed it. I'm sorry. Thanks, Todd.
Thank you. Yeah, so those projects, as I recall, like we left that little bit left over of projects that are already going, okay? And we have additional projects in case those funds don't get used. We have additional projects already lined up for those funds. The big question is going to be with inflation. The current projects that are underway, there's a lot of concern that they will be over budget, as everything else is currently under construction. But even if some of that money gets left over, then there's already projects slated for the use of that money. So, I mean, my thing is then let's try to utilize a different source for that money.
So when we looked at the portion, you know, when we allocated to the various portions in our plan, part of that was to city projects. And in those city projects, we had, I don't remember what our total number was. We've trimmed it off some, but it was more than, I would say we had more than $50 million in projects left that were on that list, which is a big list of projects that are looking for a funding source. We had that list, so we brought forward a first set of projects that made up, I don't know, it was somewhere around $75 million, and brought those forward to the council based on priority. We left a portion there in case we had cost overruns on some of the projects, just to give us a little bit of room. But we had additional projects in priority that we could go to that would still exceed the $4 million that's remaining now. We have a number of projects that are there that are left that we would go to next if we didn't do this.
Okay, so while I recognize there are still a list of projects we could do, in terms of Vice Mayor Stone's inquiry about the overages due to inflation, is that not kind of baked in already? Have we not, with what we've already approved?
Well, I mean, we approve the projects and we have contingency assumed in projects is what we try to fund. Until we go out and bid some of those, we just don't know where we're going to be with them. That was the question of, you know, once we bid a project and we get that in, that's when we usually find out if we're on budget or not, or if we're over budget. Sometimes in some of the projects, you can actually scale them back to the budget. Other projects, just, you know, you're putting in a roadway or you're doing some kind of sidewalk work. It's the length of the project, and you've got to figure out how to fund it or find other sources.
So I guess, Vice Mayor, what I'm hearing is like, we've put in that contingency, but of course we don't have a crystal ball. We have no idea, right? But we have tried to bake a cake the best we can. So I would hope that would address that concern. I understand there are other projects that are on that list that we could also fund. It's just that, and now I'll get to the economic, the GALT side of it. It's just that, you know, my best friend flew in from Austin, and I picked her up at the airport. This was back in February. And normally I would take a different route than I did that day, but I took her all the way down Meridian to where she had lived in her first apartment when she was 18, when we were both 18. all the way down at 36th. There's so much that we could be doing in terms of abandoned buildings, dilapidated buildings, just on Meridian. That's not even entirely my ward. I share that with Councilwoman Young. And you and I have toured your ward. There are so many strip malls that in the 80s and 70s we built that weren't designed for people. They were designed for us for cars, to park cars in front of, and that plan didn't work. And I just see this as an opportunity, and I see this as a pilot for what you have just described. In fact, if you talk to our council staff and talk to Assistant City Manager McDermott, I would hope the next bond does what you're saying. In fact, I would hope the next bond takes what we've done previously with economic development and just on steroids, figures out through research with other municipalities how, because this is a conversation, as you know, happening nationally, how can we convert unused, misused strip malls into pedestrian-friendly, almost old main streets, right? And one of the census tracts is on 23rd Street along like OCU, along Old Shepherd Mall, like where the bones of that sort of work are possible. My worry is if we don't do this here, we're not gonna be able to kind of get the traction and learn from the possible pitfalls, right? Because it's such new territory. Because what I'm talking about is like not just the building itself, I'm talking about the parking lots. The idea of having, like if you go to Shepherd Mall right now and you just have like a giant asphalt parking lot where next to no one's parking their cars, right? Because the years of Shepherd Mall are done. I understand there are businesses in there, but ask the neighbors at Cleveland who are like, where's retail? I have an 80-year-old, I'll show you the letter, a typed letter he sent me after a neighborhood association meeting saying, why can't I where's a place to buy a shirt right here on 23rd Street? So I would just implore you to reconsider, and all of you to reconsider, because I see this as a pilot program for something much bigger that I think would be, 15 years from now, when we pass the bond in a couple years, God willing, I think 15 years from now, our city will be transformed in ways that, quite frankly, even outshine what MAPS 4 is doing. And I think MAPS 4 is transformative. But I think this economic development angle and readdressing the failures of strip malls, I just think our people need it and they're asking for it. And I think it's a beautification thing too. And I think a lot of our residents don't understand. They think that council just comes in and puts things in some of these spaces. But you know better and I know better. They don't, because a lot of people, we don't teach this stuff. So I would just really ask us to slow down and really just ask ourselves like how this moment could be useful for something much more transformative. And if it doesn't work, then it'll allow us to figure out what would work. That's what I would ask everyone up here.
We do have a resident who signed up to speak. Councilwoman, do you want to handle that now? Michael Washington.
Oh, I'll just sit down. Wonderful horseshoe guest. Michael Washington, 3520 Northwest with a 51 on the back of it. This seems to be appealing to many people, including myself. But there's just one slight variance that I have a slight problem with. Councilman Greenwell, you made the point clear and stole my thought. I don't appreciate it. We'll accept it this time. Joking. Where are the owners of these abandoned properties included? Are we gearing toward an eminent domain type of setting? Because if property belongs to me, I get to do as I please, doesn't it? So by keeping it in-house, then quite naturally I propel the way to do as I want because it belongs to me. Let me ask the question. Again, Ms. Nice, I don't see it being a real problem with it. However, how long is the process before the owners of the actual development and abandonment are vacant? We know that many on the east side and others. When are they contacted regarding fix this up or else? Or are they not contacted because we are wanting it? How long, oh, but how long, to steal a phrase from Martin Luther King, not long. How long is the property set up? Is it for auction? You immediately get it yourself automatically? These are the questions I have. Is there a sheriff sale? Revenue replacement. Let's look at this. I'm getting ready to close. Amendment revising the proposed vacant or abandoned properties, and then they are, program, its description, eligible activities. And then you're going to use it from the coronavirus state funding and this local fiscal recovery funds. Interesting.
30 seconds, please.
Oh my God, I just got started. Amy, my goodness. I'll accept it though. Let me say in closing then, I will today appoint myself as the supervising coordinator. Y'all think I'm joking. I mean, I'm having fun today. Listen. I will appoint myself as the agent of the African American community and any others who may use my assistance to make sure that their properties are protected to the ultimate degree. Thank y'all very much, and I will be back. Amy, you got me. Thank you. Oh, I got 30 seconds left.
All right, any other comments or questions?
I'd just like to address the couple questions that were asked, and you can help me to reiterate what we heard. While, Mr. Washington, while you were out taking a break, we were talking through that, and it's for those who want to be a part of the program. It's not us going out after people to say your house is abandoned or your property is abandoned or vacant. However, it is good to probably reach out to some of the folks who may have some of those abandoned properties within our communities, depending on what ward they are in and what their appearance may be. So there are definitely ways that could happen, but that's not the purpose of this particular program. So I hope that addressed your question. And in closing, I would hope that this is not a messenger issue and that we look at the message.
Councilwoman, do you wish to make a motion? So you have an amendment. Would you like to move that amendment?
Yes, I'd like to move the amendment, please.
All right, we have a motion to adopt item 4A1. This is amendment revising the resolution. We have a motion and a second. Cast your votes. Amendment passes 7-2. And now we're on the resolution as amended, found at 4A2. We have a motion and a second on the resolution as amended. Cast your votes. Fails 3-6. All right, now we're on item 4.
In closing, I would like to say this is clearly a messenger issue and not the message, and that's the unfortunate part about something that could have been allowed to help our city.
Now we're at 4B1. This is a resolution authorizing the filing of a foreclosure action pursuant to Oklahoma Statute Title 11 regarding property at 14300 Coles Road and against its owner of record, Robert C. Owen, etc. Councilman Stonecipher is the author of this resolution, and we do have a provision for executive session if that seems necessary. Councilman Stonecipher?
This is, Your Honor, a very unique situation. I have met repeatedly with the HOA that's a part of this 14300 Coles Road house. What's unique about it is the owner, the record owner, is a Dr. Robert C. Owen. Dr. Owen has been deceased for several years, and we continue to have repeated problems with code enforcement compliance. And in meeting with the families that are around this house and the issues that keep coming up, including a new issue, I was compelled to try to find a solution and work with the homeowners association to come up with a solution to address their problems. Some of the issues, the new issue in particular, we need the advice of counsel on, and we need to discuss 11 OS Section 22-111. So I would like to move to put this into executive session.
Okay. So we've got that motion. My inclination is to just go, rather than have this hanging over our heads for the next 3 hours, my inclination is just go ahead and knock it out now and do the executive session. So if your motion is to do that, we'll take a vote and then go back and handle it. Got a motion and a second. Cast your votes to go into executive session. So this is item 4B2. Passes unanimously, and we will go into executive session and return. Okay, we have returned from executive session, and we are on item 4B1. Councilman Stone Cipher.
Your Honor, at this time, I'd move for the approval of item 4B1.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Cast your votes when you have that opportunity. Passes 6-2. Okay, we are now on item 5, City Manager Reports. Mr. City Manager.
Don't have any city manager reports, we just have claims and payroll on today.
Which you can view online, correct?
Correct.
All right, item 6, Journal of Council Proceedings. We have items A and B we could take with one motion. Got a motion and a second. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. All right, item 7, request for uncontested continuances. 2 items are already on the agenda to be deferred, 11D to April 25th and 11L to May 9th. Is there anything else, Mr. City Manager?
Yes, on page 11, item 11M, this is requested to be deferred until the 9th of May. On page 12, item 11Q1, unsecured structures, all of these items will be stricken from the agenda. Item D, 4620 North Miller Avenue, the owner is secured. Item H, 1532 Northwest 30th Street, the owner is secured. Item I, 1529 Northeast 44th Street, the owner is secured. Item J, 812 Northwest 45th Street, the owner has removed. And then item K, 1108 Southwest 151st Street, to re-notify the owner. Then on page 12, item 11R1, all of these are identical to the ones above, so I'll just give you the letters. All these will be stricken from the agenda. Item C, F, I, J, and K. And that's all the items that I have.
Can you tell me again, Craig, what the item was on page 11? I didn't get there in time.
11M, it's CE 1089.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right, we are at item 8, revocable permits and events. I express gratitude to those who probably didn't think they'd be here at 10:30 for their moment at the podium, but 8A is a revocable permit with Northeast OKC Renaissance for the One OKC event, May 6th through the 7th, using Booker T. Washington Park and Page Stadium, and LaToya Mason is here to speak.
Good morning. I'm going to bring a little color back into the room. Well, I am LaToya. This is my second year of having the pleasure of being the event captain for Northeast Oklahoma City Renaissance. And our annual event, One OKC, it's the 8th year. Can you believe it? We've been here for 8 years in Northeast Oklahoma City. This will be our 3rd year at Booker T. Washington Park. And so what we do at One OKC is bring everybody home to the east side. We have a resource fair where you can get everything from mammograms to information on affordable housing, health and wellness. We have a kids zone where we just let the kids go nuts. We do a community mural where everyone who is there can be a part of this, and it lives on the east side for the next year until we do it again. We have food trucks, and then we have really exciting, we have Embark comes and brings a bus, and we do readings on the bus that's sponsored by the Ralph Ellison Library. So really, really cool, fun things, and really what it is, it's to show the brilliance and the growth, the expansion, everything beautiful that we are doing in Northeast Oklahoma City. So I would hope that you all pass this unanimously, as it is the pride of the East Side, and we're just super happy to be able to be the force that drives advancement in Northeast Oklahoma City.
Thank you, Councilwoman Nice.
And I approve that message. So with that, I'll move for approval.
All right. All right, we have a motion and a second. Cast your votes.
Yeah, y'all beat me to the punch. Or to the button.
All right, passes unanimously. 8B is a revocable permit with the Red Coyote Running and Fitness for the Red Coyote Love Run 5K and 10K on June 24th along the North Oklahoma River Trail. And we have John Osland here to speak on this item.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor, members of council. We appreciate the opportunity to come see you guys again for the midsummer running. It'll be the 5th year for the Love Run event and the 3rd year in partnership with Social Capital down by Scissortail Park. The Love Run is a culmination of our summer 5K and 10K training programs. Then we are also pleased to be able to use this race to support the work of our partner beneficiary for this particular event, Sissy Youth Services. The event celebrates inclusivity and is also kind of segues into the Pride Festival across the Scissortail Park. As I said, it's been one of our 8 runs that we put on throughout the course of the year to celebrate health and fitness in Oklahoma City. So we appreciate your thoughtful consideration and invite you guys to join us on June 24th.
All right, Councilwoman Hammond.
Yeah, well, I always see different Red Coyote groups running around getting ready for these sorts of events. So I'm excited that it'll be happening in conjunction and near Pride festivities. So I'll move for approval.
Motion and a second. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously.
Thank you all. Have a great day.
Thank you. Have a great event. All right, 8C, revocable permit with the River Sport Foundation for Central Youth Rowing Championship, May 6th and 7th in the Boathouse District. We don't have anyone who's signed up to speak, but maybe we...
So I'm with the Parks Department. They were not able to attend today, and they have the next 4 events on your docket.
Oh, okay.
So if you have any questions, I might be able to answer those for you.
I don't have any. I'll just say let the rowing begin. I will move for approval, and you might as well just stay.
Yes. Okay, so this is item C, the Central Youth Rowing Championship. We have a motion and a second. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. The next item D is a revocable permit with the River Sport Foundation for River Bowl on August 12th. Councilwoman Nice.
I know for sure this is for our Oklahoma City Black Alumni Coalition, the River Bowl. So I hope you all, I've seen them prepare and they are practicing hard for August. So I'll move for approval for this one.
All right, we've got a motion and a second. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. Item E is a revocable permit with the River Sport Foundation for Stars and Stripes River Festival on June 24th. Councilwoman Nice.
So I'll just say you have things to do in May and June. Your calendar is already set for everyone here. So looking forward to this on June 24th and move for approval.
A motion and a second. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. And finally, item F is a revocable permit with the River Sport Foundation for Youth Rowing League Spring Championships on May 13th. Councilwoman Nice.
Yes, I'm going to assume this is following in accordance to the Central Youth Rowing Championship the prior week. So looking forward to this as well, and I will move for approval.
Motion and a second. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. All right, now we'll recess the council meeting, convene as the Oklahoma City Municipal Facilities Authority, where we have items A, B, and C we can take with one motion. We have a motion and a second. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. Now we'll adjourn OCMFA and convene as the Oklahoma City Public Property Authority, where we have items A, B, and C we can take with one motion. We have a motion and a second. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. Now we'll adjourn OCPPA and reconvene as the City Council. We are on item 9, the consent docket. And there is a scheduled presentation for item BM, and that's it. Is there anything else that a council member wishes to pull out for separate vote or separate comment or question?
Yeah, Mayor, could we pull out item X for a separate vote so I may recuse myself, please?
Okay.
Your Honor, could we have a presentation, really just some questions on item Z and then item A, D?
Okay.
Thank you.
And then, yes, just questions, presentation, more information on item AX.
Okay. All right. Well, if that's all anybody has, we can start with the separate vote, which is first in the order anyways. Item X. This is a resolution accepting the dedications contained in the final plat of Stone Point Office Park. And we could take a motion. We have a motion and a second. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. Okay, next we have item Z. This is something you wish to speak to, Councilman Greenwell.
Thank you. So this is a request for an increase in the total budget on the MAPS 4 Wellness Center of $3,019. What I'd like to hear is kind of a recap of the progress with respect to the Wellness Center, going back to the groundbreaking, which took place June 14th, I believe, 2021.
Yeah, let me get David to come out and speak to that. Can we go ahead and go to AD, and then I'll get David out
Sure.
here. Thank you.
Okay, so AD, similar types of questions. While it's a little bit concerning to see a reduction in the total contract price of $118,000, what I'm more concerned about, or as much concerned, is the additional of 20 days to complete the project. So can we also have a recap of this project going back to the date of groundbreaking? These two projects had groundbreaking within a week of each other, and where we're at now, what the expected completion date is as of here, we are in April 2023.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. Debbie Miller with the Public Works Department. I can answer your questions, Councilman Greenwell. This project started, we had some issues with getting the building tore down. We had to get temporary offices, so that took a little bit of time, and then we've had some issues with supply chains. The reason we're doing this deduction is to make sure that we have enough capacity in the project to complete it, and these two phases will be bid as separate contracts. And we do expect this to be completed this fall.
Can you give us like a month, because this date keeps changing?
October to November. And as time goes along, it could change if they encounter weather. They'll get additional days for that, or if there's something beyond their control and they need additional time.
Yeah. Now, Debbie, this is not directed towards you, but it's just the process. So for this length of time, I mean, what we're talking about is a new clubhouse. Just seems extremely strange. And I say that because just a couple of blocks from where I live, OU Health began moving dirt back in August of 2022 for a new emergency room, mini hospital type deal. And they're ready to move in. 8 months compared to 2.5 years just seems unusual. And I was going to, and I'll ask this of David, not to use the term supply chain issues in his presentation. Because again, this project with OU Health is an example of they did not allow those types of issues to slow them down.
I'm not sure what type of building construction that was. I know we had severe supply chains with the steel, getting that ordered and getting that delivered, and that delayed quite a bit.
Yeah, no, it's got steel framing throughout the structure. So it just seems odd to me that this is taking as long as it has. And like with most clubhouses, you have, I suppose, locker facilities that have been moved out in like trailers for all the users of the facilities. Like I said, going on 2.5 years if we meet this deadline. That just seems extremely strange.
It has to do with all the issues that we encountered at the very beginning of the project, having to deal with move to the temporary facilities and getting bathrooms established and then getting the building demoed. So that did take quite a bit of time to get that done.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, David Todd, Master Program Manager. Councilman, I understand you were asking about Wellness Center 4. The item that you mentioned is really an art item, but I can just...
And I appreciate that, David. I'm not so concerned about the specific item. It's really, since it's on the consent docket, see what's going on out there in total.
Yeah, so similar to what Ms. Miller was saying, is that remember this project started in the throes of the pandemic. The other thing to think about also is the delivery method that we use versus what OU Health uses. So our contractors are out there getting lowest bid so they can be lowest bid for the project. And some of these small subcontractors have gone out of business because of things. I can give you a specific example with the steel on Wellness 4. The steel erector could not get steel quick enough to keep a crew that works hourly, keep them employed with him, and they were constantly walking off because he couldn't give them the hours that they wanted. So it's those kind of issues. I can tell you that we have been on top of Wellness 4 considerably. There's a lot of work that's done inside there's a lot of work that hasn't been done outside that makes the project look like it's much further than it is. But we have a finish date right now with the contractor that we have discussed of September 1st.
Of 2023?
Yes, sir, of this year.
All right, thank you.
You said the 1st, is that correct? Okay, I'll write it down. Thank you.
Okay, we have what kind of keeping in this part of the agenda, we have a resident who signed up to speak on item AB, Ernest O'Duns.
I've learned my lesson. Not gonna touch it.
Rookie mistake.
It's wonderful to be before you, council, managers, city representatives, and mayor. Nice to be in front of you today. I am the first director of the East End, which is a district you'll be hearing about for the years to come, because we want to be right up there with the Plaza and other districts that define this city. Our primary desire is to increase commerce and communication, and commerce and community and communication between the two in Northeast Oklahoma City. We have so many fantastic businesses, so many fantastic organizations, but many times we find ourselves in a silo. And so what we hope to be is a convening entity to bring both residents and businesses together in Northeast Oklahoma City. And we want Northeast 23rd to be viewed the same way that Northwest 23rd is, as a thriving corridor in our city. And so we're super excited to be a part of this work. I've been doing community development in Northeast Oklahoma City for over a decade. was able to be a co-founder of Restore OKC, which is a wonderful nonprofit, and I'm excited for being able to continue that work in this capacity.
Thank you, Ernest. All right, well, moving on to item AX, Councilwoman Hammond.
Yes, I just wondered if staff could kind of, I thought this was an item that, particularly because there has been news stories about the DOJ investigation into the city, just kind of wanted to make sure this was an item that was brought to the attention so folks kind of know what's going on. There's not a question about kind of what, you know, why we might be contracting for additional services with 21CP and kind of how those responsibilities of various projects are going to be handled.
Sure, I'm happy to comment on that. Jason Fairbrush, Assistant City Manager. And yeah, so the item you have before you, of course, is an amendment to our existing professional services agreement with 21CP. As we know, 21C was brought in as a consultant to provide the expertise to assist with the mayor's law enforcement policy task force, and then also the city manager's community policing group. And so, as council is aware from that study and the engagement of that consultant, we came out with a series of recommendations related to the law enforcement policy task force. Yes?
Fair a minute. Why don't you move over to that podium and let's cut the mic on this one
Sure.
and see if that's the problem.
Sounds like it's coming through our speakers, and I'm not sure it's on the speakers. You're good.
Hey, I can move this one
Yes,
too.
you can. That's right. It's not as
Nice,
dangerous.
okay. All right. And so yes, exactly. Councilwoman Hammond, as you had mentioned, on November 17th, the city was notified that the DOJ was going to be looking into the city, the police department. At the same time, they had mentioned also looking at the state, specifically with regards to response tied to behavioral health incidents, just real generically speaking, behavioral health. And so, you know, one of the things we looked at within the city as that investigation kicked off was what are our resources available inside the city, and what resources might we need from outside the city to make sure that we adequately respond. And so, working with 21CP, we recognize their expertise, the fact that they have been through similar situations with other cities around the country, so far even as to working with cities that are put under consent decrees. I'm not saying that will happen, but just being prepared for all possibilities. And so we talked with 21CP, our consultant there that helped us through the other two projects that I mentioned. And we thought, you know, there's probably 3 areas we could really use some help. And the first area is really kind of task 1 within the amendment, and that is helping us expedite the delivery of our current recommendations. So as you know, we've been with a single staff member, and me helping a bit, but not much at all, have been slowly kind of working through those recommendations. And we decided, you know, it would be probably in the city and others' best interest if we expedited a bit. So task 1 will allow for that consultant and subject matter experts to give us more time, if you will, so we can hopefully expedite those implementations. And then task 2 is really focusing on kind of the crux of part of that DOJ investigation and part of the crux of what we know through our own report that 21CP delivered is how can we improve our response to incidents involving mental health. And so one of the things I've learned by visiting another city was, you know, sometimes the mental health responses, those get started as kind of, well, what can we know we need to start something. Let's build it. How much can we do this next year, you know, based on resources, budget, and all this? And what we're really looking at with task 2 is getting some consultant help to say, you know what, help us with a 5-year strategic plan, vision, so that we know exactly where we're headed with mental health response. Again, versus just kind of let's take it year by year and see how we can build it. So we think that'll be really important, not only for the benefit of our community entirely, but also specifically addressing potential recommendations that might come out of DOJ. And then finally, the third task is really just kind of ad hoc, if you will, support, guidance, advice as we respond to information inquiries by the DOJ, and even looking forward to the end where the DOJ is going to come in eventually and say, hey, this is a report, this is our recommendations, really kind of helping us sift through those recommendations and making sure that we're responding appropriately, but also making sure that it works for Oklahoma City. And so we think that's where the consultant will really help. Apologize for the very long-winded explanation, but we've thought through this quite a bit and believe this will help in many facets of our current implementation and preparing for DOJ.
Yeah, well, thank you. Yeah, don't apologize for a lengthy explanation when it communicates that there has been some real thought and helps, I think, both council but also the public kind of understand what our response to the investigation is, but also that I think to your point, that this is something we've been wanting to pursue and maybe just need a little bit more of that technical assistance to do it as best we can. So appreciate the information.
Thank you.
Okay, so that was AX, and now we are finally to the scheduled presentation at BM.
Yeah, Melinda McMillan Miller, our Parks and Recreation Director, will give us a presentation on this project.
Yes. Thank you very much. Melinda McMillan Miller, Parks and Recreation Director. In front of you is the new MOU that we've drafted with the USS Oklahoma City Park Association. This agreement has been a long time in the making, and we're very excited to be able to finally bring this document to you for your consideration today. We're really hoping to be able to bring the sail and dive planes from the now in the process of being decommissioned USS Oklahoma City submarine. The submarine has a long storied history along with all of its crew members, and of course our very own Debbie Martin had a lot to do with that, that boat being a part of Oklahoma City's history. Also on this display will be pieces of the other Oklahoma City vessel. We'll have hopefully the anchor, bell, other components from that ship, and they'll all be located on the north shore of Wiley Post Park, which is just at the southern tip or end of Lower Scissortail Park. So making really great progression for pedestrians and people to enjoy our river parks up and down the entire river corridor, and just be a great enhancement and really hearken to the history of our wonderful military personnel and veterans who always make Oklahoma City shine. I'd be happy to entertain any questions. In your packet, you should have some renderings of the potential look of the site once it's completed. The Park Association will be doing all privately fundraising for these amenities to be constructed and built in the park, and they will be starting that as soon as you all consider the item.
Thank you.
Mayor, if I could make a couple of comments. I served on the committee that worked on the site selection, and today we had Rear Admiral Greg Slavonic and retired Commander Tucker McHugh that were here and wanted to speak to us, but we got tied up in an executive session, so they had to leave. Greg's the new interim executive director of the Oklahoma Veterans Affairs, and he and retired Commander Tucker McHugh did a great job in helping us to find a location. This process went on for over, 2, 3, 4 years?
4 years, yeah.
Yeah, and we looked at everything from Lake Hefner to Scissortail Park to all over the place trying to find the appropriate place. And I will say, and Melinda won't take credit for this, but she came up with a great location that everybody could finally agree upon, and it's just going to be a wonderful spot for the sale. But I'd also like to recognize, if I could at this time, the other committee members that worked hard on this, Mayor Ron Norick, Gary Mars, David Greenwell, Don Beck. Don Beck's an architect here in Oklahoma City, well-known architect. He did all the renderings for free, pro bono. Didn't charge a penny, and I think our hats should go off to him. Last, I'd like to mention that when I went to the decommissioning last year, Debbie Martin was there, and much to all of our surprise, I think everybody knows this, she was the liaison with the Navy for the USS Oklahoma City, and had done that dating back to, I think, like the early 90s. At that ceremony, where we were expecting, when we got there, there may be 20, 30, 40 people there. there were hundreds and hundreds of former officers that showed up to pay their respects to the ship. But when we got there, Debbie was awarded the highest civilian honor for her service to the USS Oklahoma City. And I think that's an important point, and I think it's one that Debbie doesn't really mention very often, but we were really proud to see her receive that award that day. And so this is bringing this whole thing full circle. It took us 4 years to get a site, but we've got it now, and I'm really excited to see it finished. Thank you.
We expect them, our next steps in this process really for the city's side of the coin is to then petition to the Department of Defense to request a long-term loan agreement for these items from the vessel itself. So hopefully 2 to 3 years, we'll be able to have all those components in place, and we'll be able to do a big grand opening of the new park.
I forgot 2 things that I learned while I was there in Washington for the decommissioning. Number one, the USS Oklahoma City has a motto, and the motto is the sooner the better, which I like. And then the other thing is the mess hall is named after Cattleman's and has a sign from Cattleman's in the mess hall. And talking to all these retired officers that had served on the USS Oklahoma City, many of them come through Oklahoma City, and they always stop at Cattleman's to have lunch or dinner.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that concludes the items on the consent docket that had been pulled out for any reason, and we can now take a motion to adopt the items not already passed. We have a motion and a second. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. Item 10, concurrence docket. We have items A through J we can take with one motion. We have a motion and a second. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. Now, item 11, items requiring separate votes. Item 11A is an ordinance on final hearing that was recommended for approval, rezoning 18622 Southeast 59th from AA and C3 to C3. Councilman Stone.
Thank you, Mayor. Has anyone signed up to speak?
They have not.
This is a relatively small commercial project out off of the new Kickapoo Turnpike. There's no protests. Staff recommended approval as well as the Planning Commission, so I'll go ahead and move it for approval.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. Item 11B is an ordinance on final hearing that was recommended for approval, rezoning 5600 South Chartel from R1 to PUD 1928. Councilman Stone, we do have someone who has signed up to speak, and this looks like they have questions about it.
Okay.
Do you want to start there?
Sure.
Okay. Renata Bleakley. Appears to have departed, so back to you.
Okay. Well, just in case, Mr. Box, can you go ahead and come up? This project, if you didn't look at it, it's a pretty nice infill project located over off of 56th and Chartel. Any thoughts there on the oil field tanks, things like that?
Sure. So David Box, 522 Colcord Drive. In terms of the oil and gas operations on site, there was a discussion at Planning Commission with an addition of a new TE. If you look at the memo, you'll see a TE3, a site-proof fence shall be provided around the oil and gas equipment. So that was an addition requested at Planning Commission that we agreed to. The document has been amended to incorporate that.
Great. Thank you. Again, this one was recommended by staff as well as the Planning Commission. So with that, I'll go ahead and move for its approval as well.
We have a motion and a second. Cast your votes.
Thank you.
Passes unanimously. Okay, item C is an ordinance on final hearing that was recommended for approval, rezoning 8825 North I-35 Service Road from PUD 771 to PUD 1929. Councilwoman Nice, no one has signed up to speak.
Thank you. I did have an opportunity to speak with the applicant before the meeting to understand what this use would be used for to amend the current PUD. So with that, I will move for approval.
We have a motion and a second. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. Item D was previously deferred, so we advanced to item E. This is an ordinance on final hearing that was recommended for approval, rezoning 14001 Northwood Drive from RA to PUD 1931. Councilman Carter, no one has signed up to speak.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor. With no one protesting and approval, I will move for approval subject to technical evaluation.
Motion and second. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. Okay, item 11F is a ordinance on final hearing recommended for approval, rezoning 6401 Shiloh Boulevard from PUD 1135 to PUD 1933. And Councilwoman Peck, we do have someone who has signed up to speak, and I don't think it is the applicant.
Okay, we'll start there.
All right, Connie Coppinger. Also no longer present, I guess.
Mr. Grubbs here.
Good afternoon, Mark Grubbs, 1800 South Sarah Road. On behalf of the applicant, this is just a commercial PUD that is consistent with the fast-growing development in the area. So we just wrote this PUD to accommodate some of the uses of my client. So it was approved at Planning Commission. We agreed to modify the TEs at Planning Commission. And we just asked for your approval. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
So the documents show no protest at planning, but were the TEs from the planning commissioners themselves, or were?
The TEs were from Planning Commission themselves.
Okay. And I'm looking at this layout, and I just want to express some concerns. That's a very busy section of Highway 152. And I see that there's a second access that you're proposing on the south end of the...
I've already coordinated that with ODOT, and they're good with that access point.
All right, is it a right out only? Or are we planning on putting people left across that section of roadway?
Currently it's planned to be right in, or it's planned to be north and southbound access point. Okay. We did run that by ODOT since they approved all the driveways on that, and they were perfectly fine with that with little questions, so.
All right. Well, my concerns have been noted. We'll visit about it again. I'm excited for the development, though. It's going to serve a lot of residents in that area. So with that, no protest. I'll move for approval. Mark.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. All right, item 11G is an ordinance on final hearing, rezoning 1645 Northwest 4th Street from R2 and I3 to SPUD 1464. This was recommended for approval, and Councilwoman Hammond, someone has signed up to speak in support.
Okay, can we first hear from the applicant to just sort of make sure we know what's happening here and kind of talk about what the project will entail, and then we can hear from the supporter.
Yes, David Box, 522 Colcord Drive, here on behalf of the applicant, and the director of the Homeless Alliance is also here with us today. So the application before you is an opportunity to convert that existing warehouse to an emergency shelter, as well as on the west side of the site to allow for housing for transitional purposes. So at the time of the Planning Commission, there was a protester that I don't see here today, and there was a lengthy discussion about various operational matters within predominantly the warehouse. And so you will probably notice that in your memo, all 3 TEs are underlined, meaning all 3 TEs were added by Planning Commission. We agreed to them. We believe that we still perform the tasks that we need to perform with those, but they were added at the Planning Commission stage due to the protest. We did meet with the protesters several times in an effort to try to satisfy or ease their concerns. Their complaint predominantly was location. If you look at this location, the reason it provides such strategic advantage is because of where it is located in proximity to the Homeless Alliance. So the services that are available to those folks experiencing homelessness are all right within that area, which is why we believe that this is a wonderful opportunity to locate this here. And Dan's here to, if there's any more specific operational questions that are needed to be answered, but I hope that answered the question.
I just have one question, and this is just out of curiosity. I see there should be a maximum of 300 participants at the facility. I'm just curious how that came about, as far as if there was a limit, how we limited the number of people.
Yeah, if, Councilwoman, if you don't mind, I might have Dan Strawn speak to that.
Thank you.
And Dan Strong was the person who had signed up to speak. And Dan, we have spent a lot of your time these last few weeks, so thank you for that.
It feels like it, and my voice is not much better than it was last time, so I apologize for that. Councilwoman Nice, in answer to your question about how we chose capacity, I have the last utilization of the last 3 winter contingencies, and I'll just. And based on our previous experience operating winter contingency shelter in Oklahoma City for the last 3 winters, 300 is about the capacity, unmet need in capacity for when we go over the utilization limits.
Well, I don't have any other questions, and I'm happy to move for approval, subject to any other conversation.
And Dan, was that sufficient speaking? Are you good? All right.
I would say, though, that the winter shelter is just a piece of this SPUD, and maybe the more important part is that 38 new units of SRO permanent supportive housing, and over the next 5 years, that is absolutely the direction we need to be moving as a community. So, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so we have a motion and a second on item G. Cast your votes when you are able.
Thank you.
Passes unanimously. Okay, item H is an ordinance on final hearing that was recommended for approval, rezoning 4913 North Lincoln from C3 SPD 452 and Lincoln Boulevard Urban Design Overlay District to SPD 1485 and Lincoln Boulevard Urban Design Overlay District. And Councilwoman Nice, no one is on to speak.
Thank you. The purpose of this request is for commercial and light industrial development, and this is unique because it did have to go through the urban design overlay district because of Lincoln Boulevard having an overlay. And if you pass by Lincoln coming down, you'll see that there is just some dirt. So it's really good to actually have something active on this particular part of this corner of Northeast part, almost the 50th of Lincoln Boulevard. So with that, I will move for approval.
We have a motion and a second. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. Item I is an ordinance on final hearing recommended for approval, rezoning 4019 Northwest 164th Street from PUD 1451 to SPUD 1496. Councilman Stonecipher, no one has signed up to speak.
Thank you, Your Honor. The rezoning is to permit office, commercial, and light industrial development. It was passed by the Planning Commission. There are no protests, so at this time I'll move for approval.
We have a motion and a second. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. Item 11J is an ordinance on final hearing that was recommended for approval. It's a special permit to operate a mining and processing, mining and raw materials strip mine use in the I-2 Moderate Industrial District, found at 4626 Northeast 23rd. Councilwoman Nice, no one has signed up to speak.
Thank you. This is, as we just heard, it's complicated, but it's not. This one in particular is to really clean up the site for the most part, and unfortunately it takes all of these things to do it. But I am thankful for the owners of the property. There were concerns by the neighbors, and they met a couple times, and they were able to come up with an agreement as far as these TEs that we do see. So there is a time permitted for them to do this work, and again, grateful to our residents that live within the Garden district, as well as the owner of the property, to be able to come to an agreement. So with that, I'll move for approval.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. Item K is an ordinance on final hearing that was recommended for approval for a special permit to operate an automotive and equipment automobile dealerships and malls use in the C3 district found at 601 West I-240. Councilman Stone, no one has signed up to speak.
Thank you, Mayor. This is for an auto dealership next to another auto dealership on I-240 just west of Walker, recommended by the Planning Commission, so I will move for its approval.
A motion and a second. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. Item L was previously deferred. Item M was previously deferred, which brings us to item N, which is an ordinance on final hearing to close 100 feet of Northwest 71st Street and 150 feet of the east-west utility easement in Block 1 of Manor Hill Edition, etc. Councilman Cooper.
Yes. Has anyone signed up to speak?
No.
The applicant just walked out. Okay, well, that solves my dilemma, what I'd like to do, because it's a little bit of a humdinger. I'd like to defer this for 2 weeks.
Okay.
And Kenny, it's the one that we discussed, the right-of-way and all that stuff, so maybe in 2 weeks, let's just be prepared to say what we've learned. So it's a thing, it's like a whole thing.
Okay.
So, but we'll have council very well-versed in it at that meeting, so. Just a 2-week deferral, please.
All right, so the motion is to defer item 11N for 2 weeks.
Please, thank you.
With a motion and a second, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. Okay, 11O is an ordinance on final hearing. This relates to the Parks and Rec section of the Oklahoma City Municipal Code. This was previously presented. It has to do with restrictions on game fish. Then there was a public hearing, and this is finally the third meeting on this proposed ordinance change. Unless there is any comment or questions, council could move adoption if they so desired. I have a motion and a second. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. Okay, 11P is a public hearing regarding the dilapidated structures here listed. We have items A through D. I don't think any of these were struck at the beginning. Amy, has anyone signed up to speak?
No, they have not.
All right, so we can advance to the item found at P2, which is a resolution declaring that the structures are dilapidated. We have a motion and a second. Cast your votes.
I'll vote aye. My
Okay.
things were crashing.
Passes unanimously. 11Q1 is a public hearing regarding the unsecured structures here listed, except for those previously struck. Amy, has anyone signed up to speak?
No, they haven't.
So we will advance to the resolution found at Q2 declaring that the structures are unsecured. We have a motion and a second. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. Item 11R1 is the public hearing regarding the abandoned buildings here listed, except for those previously struck. Amy, has anyone signed up to speak?
No, they haven't.
So we will advance to the resolution found at R2 declaring that the buildings are abandoned. We have a motion and a second. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. All right, S1 is the second public hearing regarding amending the June 21, 2022 resolution approving certain fire listed and other sales tax expenditures for this fiscal year. This was presented at our previous meeting. Amy, has anyone signed up to speak under this public hearing?
No, they have not.
So we can advance to the resolution found at S2, amending the June 21st, 2022 resolution approving certain fire listed and fire other sales tax expenditures, etc. We have a motion and a second on the resolution found at S2. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. T1 is a resolution authorizing and directing the municipal councillor to enter into an agreed settlement and journal entry of judgment in the Canadian County District Court case styled City of OKC v. WP Land. Staff has not requested an executive session. We have a motion and a second. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. 11U1 is a resolution ratifying the prior actions of legal counsel necessary for the city to participate in the settlement negotiated by legal counsel and approving participation in the individual settlement agreements with a variety of parties. Staff is requesting an executive session here, which is provided for at U2. So why don't we take a vote on that, and we're close enough to the end, we'll probably go ahead and handle that at the end of our other business and then return to consider U1. We have a motion and a second to go into executive session. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. We will go into executive session at the end of our other business and then return for a potential consideration of 11U1. Okay, we are now at 11V. This is one claim recommended for denial. Executive session is not requested. We have a motion and a second. Cast your votes. Motion carries unanimously. 11W are claims recommended for approval. We have items A and B we could take with one motion, and staff has not requested executive session. We have a motion and a second. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. All right, now we're at item 12, comments from council. Ward 1.
Not today, sir. Thank you.
Ward 2, Ward 3, Ward 4, Ward 6, Ward 7.
Yes, thank you. First, I want to thank our council for approving our East End OKC Merchant District Association. We heard from the director of this, and I must say this has been many years in the making for us to now get to a point where we can say we're towards the process of our city being able to help us to promote this particular area in a different way in relation to all of our other districts that we have for the city. So now we can say East End OKC is a part of our OKC districts that we support and collaborate with. So very grateful for that. I do want to openly acknowledge the passing of one of our former Ward 7 Bond Advisory members, Mr. Clarence Beatty. And he was appointed, if I'm not mistaken, by our previous council member, John Pettis. And he was a very important banker and businessman in our community, and graduated from Douglas High School and went on to go to Stanford and Princeton. And so again, that speaks to the beauty and what comes out of Northeast Oklahoma City for this young man and his best friend to both go to Princeton with mathematic educations with them, and coming back. And for you all, I'll reference his daughter is the executive director, if you will, or manager of the Freedom Center, Christina Beatty. So this was her father. He did serve until he could not anymore with his illness, and we did have to reappoint or appoint a new member for our Ward 7 Bond Advisory. But I will say, I remember I met with him and our traffic commissioner on the same day, and that was when I first was elected, and both of them were ready to hand in their resignations because they thought I was going to ask for them. But it was to the contrary. I knew that they were doing the work that we needed for our ward, and it was very, very grateful that he was with us. So he was laid to rest on Saturday, and I know his family will truly miss him and our city for his commitment, and he was a faithful member of the St. John Missionary Baptist Church. I do want to also mention one of the things I mention every year. It's revival time in Northeast Oklahoma City and far Northeast Oklahoma City, and this is the 79th annual simultaneous revival. And I bring it up because 79 years ago, this was started within our community, and this is the oldest revival in the country. And we have pastors here in our city from the East Coast. I met one last night from Washington, D.C. to the West Coast. One's going to be preaching on Friday night from Los Angeles, California, and all of the cities in between. So if you run into any of these pastors, please greet them with a warm Oklahoma City welcome. And we're grateful that this type of revival has been able to survive as long as it has in our community for our city. And lastly, I do want to acknowledge, we weren't able to get it in time, but this week we are acknowledging Black Maternal Health Week. And the theme for this year is Our Bodies Belong to Us, Restoring Black Autonomy and Joy. And one of the things that it is important to realize is that Black women are disproportionately affected with a mortality rate of 55.3 deaths per 1,000 live births. And that's in comparison to others. And Black women they die at 3 times the rate for other women in the United States. So these are things we want to make sure we continue to speak through, especially for our communities that need to know that our mothers, our Black mothers matter. So happy Black Maternal Health Week.
Thank you. Ward 8.
Thank you, Your Honor. I wanted to offer my condolences to P.B. Odom III in the loss of his wife, Beth. My thoughts and prayers are with his family at this time. The reason I want to mention Mr. Odom is whenever we have issues, major issues facing the city when it comes to planning and development, he's always a voice that I count on. He's always very reasonable, and he's always helpful in coming up with solutions. So I offer my condolences.
Thank you. Okay, item 13, citizens to be heard. We have Ronnie Kirk.
I said, it's been a busy 2 weeks. My name is Ronnie Kirk. My address is 2328 North Missouri. Over the Easter weekend, we had 250 parents and grandparents, over 100 kids. We gave them 3 new bicycles, 100 stuffed bunny rabbits. And also, Oklahoma retailers, liquor store retailers, they reached out to me. Said, Mr. Kirk, you're doing a lot of stuff for us, and I don't even own a liquor store. They said, you're speaking for us so well, you know. And for the homeless, y'all know I care about the homeless. We got a brand new, we want to build a brand new jail for prisoners or the incarcerated. We already got a jail, a beautiful jail. You can also make that for the homeless and for the veterans. You know, it's good to give them housing, 400 houses in 3 years, when you already got a facility right down the street. Put the veterans on the bottom and the second, you have an area you can put the mentally unstable. You can have another area for, you know, the others. We already got it, a place for them. You know, our city is coming so well into the future, getting all the streets paved. And as soon as they pave them, you see chases down the street, they tearing up the lights, they're running in the curves, they're running in the buildings, you know. And you know, I've
30
sat here
seconds,
many
please.
times watching people trying to defend their property. People breaking into them, setting fires on through the window. Anybody ever thought about, with all the medications everybody's taking, and so many of them is mentally unstable, what is all the medication doing when you smoke other things to do with your medication? You need to do a survey on that. You know, everybody's going through something. Everybody. So for the homeless, we got a place for thousands of them now, not 400 in 3 years. We got a place for them now. It won't cost you nothing. You got doctors and lawyers and
Kirk.
everybody.
Mr.
No,
Kirk.
they get tax write-offs.
We're over time. Is there any final statement?
And I want to say thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank
Mr. Kirk. All right, that concludes citizens to be heard, and now we've got to go into the previously provided for executive session, and we will return. All right, we are back from executive session and on item 11U1, resolution ratifying prior actions on the cases here listed, and we can take a motion on the resolution. We have a motion and a second. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. We have now reached item 14, adjournment, and we are adjourned.